Akande joins us now. He's a former presidential aide and also the host of Channel Television's Inside Sources. Good morning, and it's good to see you this morning. I know that you have been asking for some time that the president be bullish about this issue of state police, that he should push it through the same way he pushed through the tax reforms issue. I don't know how, are you satisfied given what has now transpired on the floor of the Nigerian Senate?
Thank you, Margaret, and good morning, Nigerians. Certainly, it's a bit of progress now that the presidency has sent the bill on state police to the National Assembly, and of course, we've seen the pace at which the National Assembly, both chambers have taken the issue. So that is good. You will wish that this happened maybe a year or two before now, but hey, better late than never. I think the other issue that we ought to be concerned about now is the transparency of this process. I've read a few concerns about the fact that people don't really know the details of what is contained in the bill. I'm not sure whether there were, public sittings, and the kind of opportunity that people have for public hearing for what is in the bill. I think there's a bit of concern about that, and that is what I think we should try to. They should try to sort out, just so we have a fair and transparent process for people to know what the details of what is being passed is. I think that's the only issue that I have at this point.
Is it not a little too late for that? Because right now it looks like we have a fait accompli on our hands. If it's already done, what can we do about it if we're not satisfied?
Yeah, well, so it is still going to the states, for concurrence, which means that there is still an opportunity to make corrections, amendments, as it were. And we have to make the point that a public hearing ought to have taken place, so that people, civil societies, interested stakeholders would have had an opportunity to contribute to the bill itself. So as we are speaking now, people don't have that kind of information. Yes, there is a national consensus that we should have state police, essentially, but the details, who does what are the control mechanisms, how do you ensure that the governors, don't abuse it, what is the relationship between the state and the federal police, and all of those things. These are issues that ought to be fairly publicly debated and people given the opportunity to contribute. Now, that has not happened at the level of the federal legislature. So I hope that as it goes to the states, we get an opportunity to correct that.
We'll be looking forward to that, Kayla.
Yes, so I want to be able to get you to talk about this Pastor Adeboye's call for Global Anti-Terror Alliance. So Pastor Enoch Adeboye is formally urging the United States and the Western Coalition to launch an urgent security partnership with Nigeria to defeat systematic terrorism. Maybe you could expand on that. Were you there when this call was made, and what are your thoughts on it? Okay,
thank you, Kayla. Good to see you. So there is this Save Nigeria group, that has been working with the U.S. government, which is made up of Nigerians in the U.S. and some Americans who are also concerned about what it is that is happening around insecurity in Nigeria. So they held a gala on Tuesday, and yes, I was there. I also spoke at the event, and what was remarkable at this event was the passion and the body, that Pastor Adeboye shared. I imagine publicly for the first time, the passion. He spoke for over 25 minutes, and he spoke about his own pain as the leader of a church whose members and pastors have been victims, of extreme violence, and how he had to hold his own outrage, how he had to hold his own outrage, not burst out, because of how much pain he's had to carry. And so he used that platform, in Washington, D.C. to say that, look, it's good a thing that the Americans are helping us. He actually commended President Trump, because he said that he's a good politician because he does what he says he would do. And then he went ahead to say that, look, the Americans should continue to help Nigeria, and as a matter of fact, should get some kind of global coalition, of their own allies and Nigeria's friends across the world to come together and help Nigeria sort out, this problem of terrorism, banditry, this killing, this bloodletting, So that was the point. And yes, I was in the room. And in my own contribution, I did say that when we call attention to some of these things that are going on in Nigeria, the insecurity, the killings, the violence, we don't do it to call to bring a bad name to the government, but we do it because we are human beings. We cannot ignore it, and we will accept any kind of help from any quarters that can help us to curb the violence. And it was a very important meeting because it had quite a number of American politicians, had a number of policymakers, from the U.S. government, and a lot of Nigerians, both from Nigeria and in the United States, attended. As a matter of fact, the ambassador of Nigeria was also represented, and he gave a very detailed speech.
Yeah.
So it was a very impressive.
I mean,
event.
Mr. Laulu, the criticism, and since this came out, people have been talking about it. Help is not free. Are we saying we're accepting help regardless of what we have to pay for it?
Well, okay, Kela, I don't know what you have in mind as to what we have to pay for it. We do have friends, in the international community, so often people form this kind of alliance coming together to solve what is actually not just a Nigerian problem, as you know. It's a global problem. It's a problem that even has a lot to do with what is happening in the Sahel, which then affects that region of Africa. And then, of course, there are terrorist groups that have anchors around the Sahel and, on the tip of Nigerian border that are also active elsewhere, in the world, against, working against American interests in some instances. Yeah, so it's a global problem. It's an international problem, and so it's not a bad thing or unusual thing to have people come together to deal with it. And I don't really see, what kind of payments that we have to make that is untoward so far. It doesn't affect our sovereignty. The federal government themselves have, yielded to this kind of collaboration. Don't forget that currently we have a U.S.-Nigeria joint working group led from our side by the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, and led on the side of the Americans by the Undersecretary of Politics, Mrs. Hall. So, this collaboration is already there. Pastor Adeboye is saying that, look, let's make it stronger. Let's make it stronger. Let's make it more global.
Indeed, I'm sure that people will continue to keep tabs on that particular development, especially, it wasn't so much the fact that help is not free. Whilst people, of course, are a little skeptical on that particular count, I think it was the manner in which the help came, the very controversial statement that was made as to whether or not there was a genocide targeted specifically at Christians. I'm unsure if we have been able to lay that particular baby to bed now. Do you think that we have been able to douse sufficiently, and there is a greater understanding that help is needed, whether or not we agree that there is a genocide or there isn't one?
Well, yeah, I think that we are getting close to that point where that that controversy is sort of mellowing. Because if you listen to the kind of exchanges, even from the point of view of people who spoke for government, why they don't come out to say, yes, we know that there is genocide. The rhetoric has changed to recognize the fact that indeed these are Nigerians, whether they are Christians or Muslims or whatever, that are being killed. So that's the controversy is still there somewhere, but I think it has mellowed from the mainstream conversation to some kind of development of a consensus that look, they are Nigerians, and let's see how we can help stop the situation, the problem. So that's the impression that I get. Not that it has disappeared, but I think that narrative has mellowed down quite a bit.
Well, I think it's important that I use the statement, put the baby to bed, because a sleeping baby can always awake. And we hope that, when it awakes, we will have, something to really deal with that particular situation and have a frank conversation on the state of religious affairs in Nigeria. But let's, look at this particular story, which has been developing now for a few days. This trial of Omoyele Sowore, who is now in the custody of the correctional services. And we saw how a federal high court judge here in Abuja revoked his bail because he didn't show up in court, I think, once or twice or thereabout, without good cause. And his bail was revoked. And then we've been seeing the drama. And sometimes I'm a little curious as to why does it get this dramatic when it comes to his personality? Is it that security agencies are unaware on how to, or what the procedure should be? Shouldn't we always see this confusion around arrest, around where he should be? We saw DSS officials involved. I don't know, I'm sure you must have been watching as I have, especially on social media, some of the videos that happen behind the scenes. Are you as confused as I am?
Well, maybe not confusion from my point of view, but certainly worried, that the federal government, and particularly the DSS, which, by the way, has a leadership that many of us have commended for his different style, of running the organization, but quite worried that, the DSS has allowed this to become much of a poor reflection of its own, seeming savvy, that many of us have commended. Honestly, I think that the matter could have been handled way better. Yes, while you could say that, well, look, calling the president a criminal, while you could say indeed that, hey, I mean, that's maybe, not correct technically. The man has not been convicted of any crime. While you can say that on the one hand, you can actually say on the other hand that, look, the man is a politician. Both the president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and Omoyele Sowore, they are both presidents. As a matter of fact, they were both candidates in the last election. Probably will be both candidates again next year. So you should have managed, how you treated somebody like Sowore, and not have this kind of showcase that suggests some, Gestapo impressions, going after him, grabbing him, and all of those stuff. I'm not even sure that, making this a court case, I'm not sure that is the best way to resolve the matter. Look, I mean, we've had instances in this country where people, call the president, all kinds of names, and even, did all kinds of stuff. I remember in the case of former President Goodluck Jonathan, people, had a casket of him. There are images of him hung on a tree, and all kinds of stuff, all the way. I don't know that there's one particular president in Nigeria that did not suffer some kind of very harsh, description by opponents and by activists. So making the Sowore case to become much of a national showcase of embarrassment to the government, I don't think that it is the best way to handle this matter. That's my view. And you must you must give Sowore, the credit that the guy is willing and quite ready to take the scars, for his beliefs. And of course, he gets a platform, a bigger platform than normal when you treat him this kind of way. And I'm not sure that is to the advantage of the federal government. I don't think so. I think there is an error, in the way that this matter is being handled by the federal government, and I think they should rethink their approach.
Mr. Akande, you stated something that a lot of people have said that it didn't look good. It really didn't. But I spoke to our correspondent who was at the court, Omoyele, and just so we can get an idea of what it is that was going on at the time. And she said there were stones being put in different parts of the court. It did feel like there was going to be violence. That's how it felt. And that heightened sense may have also heightened the reaction from the DSS as well. I don't know. And you talked about what he said and the fact that many presidents have been criticized and whatnot, but there was something particular about the accusation in this matter. I'm not going to say the same things that Omoyele said, but those things were very particular. And some people have said, well, maybe it's important that many people realize that in your expression, in your freedom of expression, you have to now be a little bit careful. If you don't have proof that someone is a drug dealer, don't call the person a drug dealer. If you don't have proof of this, don't say this, almost like an example for people who genuinely would want to criticize government to be a bit more careful when they do so and not libel people in the process. What do you make of that?
Well, so when that is the perception of government, I think that government is entitled to pursue a case, but our argument is that ought to be done through the civil procedure, okay, not to try to criminalize free speech, and some of these acts, of law, like such as the cyber crime bill, has been criticized and portions of it declared improper by, I think, the ECOWAS court, based on the African Charter and other extant international documents that affirm people's freedom of speech and human rights, fundamental human rights issues. So the point is not to try to criminalize some of these things, but to pursue, redress in a civil nature. It was the same point that we made during the case of Dele Faro TV, that look, these things should not be criminalized. Look across the world. I mean, look at what look at how Malema, I think Julius Malema in South Africa. Look at how his speech at times is considered to be very extreme. But it doesn't get criminalized, even all across the world, in the United Kingdom, here in the United States, people say all kinds of things. I mean, the US president has also been described as a criminal, as a matter of fact, by his opponent, and you don't see them going to make it a criminal case. If you want to seek redress, you use the civil procedure, and that is what the DSS ought to have done, and taking the matter all the way. But to criminalize the stuff, and then clamp the guy in jail, is certainly a poor reflection, and it undermines the kind of image that the current DG of SSS is trying to create for the organization, for which many of us have commended him.
Okay, so whilst there has been, we can criticize whether or not the matter was weighty enough for it to have gone to court, but it has now gone to court. The DSS felt that the way to do that, if you have any grounds, is to take a citizen to a court of law and let the court decide if that was really worth anything at all. But the drama now is that he did not appear in court once or twice, and his bail was revoked. Do you think that, first, that allegation should have even come up? Or do you think that it's a valid allegation to raise? I'm just saying. And do you think that the person who is accused, has also conducted himself? Let's not forget that this is also a presidential candidate, somebody who will come and swear by the Nigerian Constitution and swear to uphold it, do you think that his own conduct too has also shown that, you know, this is something that he intends to do, take seriously, should he become president? Just say.
Well, of course, so the judge is the one that is running this matter, and we can't second guess, the fact that he has the authority, he has the gavel, the court has the gavel, and I don't want to go into those details, not being a lawyer, myself, but I don't think that Mr. Sowore has fundamentally done anything that is, deserving of the treatments that we have seen him go through. Honestly, and that's my whole point. That yes, the federal government could take the matter to court, but not under the criminal procedure. It ought to be a civil procedure, and they could argue their case and demand for damages, even their cases have been affirmed by court.
Yeah.
But using the civil procedure, using the criminal procedure, I think undermines, issues of fundamental human rights, undermines issues of free speech. You don't want people to be afraid in a democracy to express themselves. While we're not saying that people shouldn't be responsible, but you got to manage that relationship very gingerly. So that you are not seen as trying to criminalize free speech.
I think the clarity has been provided on that you don't have a problem with the court case. It is the manner in which it has been done. I mean, the fact that we're pursuing this as a criminal matter instead of a civil matter is the clarity that is needed. I'm raising this because we also have people who are saying, but the matter is that he jumped bail. So don't we have anything to say to that? Well, Kayla, I know you have one more issue to raise.
Yeah, and we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, and it's a statement from the Legal Practitioners Privilege Committee, LPPC. They had their 173rd general meeting, and they approved in that meeting the suspension of Chief Mike Ozekome from the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. This statement by Kabir E. Akande, Esquire, who's the Chief Registrar, Supreme Court of Nigeria Secretary, Legal Practitioners Privileges Committee. And they're saying that this action was taken pursuant to paragraph 26.6 of the guidelines of the conferment of the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria and all matters pertaining to the rank pending the final determination of the disciplinary proceedings presently before the Disciplinary and Ethics Subcommittee of the LPPC and other proceedings. Now, of course, we heard about this case, talked about it some time back. What do you make of this? Is this the right way to go?
Well, I think it is reassuring that the committee, has taken this kind of approach. So it's something that gives some cheer. Because I think all of us have been, we've witnessed, quite a few, ethical concerns, about some of these things. And we've not had so much of a pushback from the institutions that are responsible for ensuring that lawyers' conduct remains, proper. There are many cases that frivolous cases that that abuses or that constitute an abuse of the court process that lawyers still take to court. Elsewhere they would have lost their shirts. For such things. But this action is quite commendable to say that look, pending the determination of the ethical issues that are involved. Mr. Ozekome should not use the title. That is, it's a good development, and I hope that we can have more enforcement, of the ethical conduct for lawyers, especially, in the kind of cases, that they bring up, frivolous cases that waste the time of the court, that waste the time of the public. Cases that people know has been resolved, has been sorted out, they will bring it afresh, and all kinds of stuff, So yes, it is good, but we want that committee to do more to assure the public that lawyers will be held to a higher standard because they are ministers in the temple of justice.
I will skip tabs on this issue of justice, and we hope that it is meted all around, especially to those who try to hold our country to ransom. Just also keeping in mind that they're still children. I mean, it's really hard to think about it, Mr. Akande. It's raining in Abuja here, and I imagine also raining in the forest. And we're still yet to get these children back in Oyo State, even the children in Borno as well. But we hope, we continue to hope. But we have to thank you very much, as always, for speaking with us all the way from the United States and finding time to keep tabs on matters developing here in Nigeria. Laolu Akande is the host of Channel Television's Inside Sources and also a former presidential aide.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's where we'll wrap up this beautiful Thursday morning. We hope that you keep warm, stay safe, stay productive. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Business Morning is at the top of the hour. I'm Kayla Megwa. Have a great day ahead.